Hello. Yeah, excuse me if I'm a bit tired, because I think at home it's now already sleeping time for me. But I will do my best. I will not go into details. I think that is a copy from LinkedIn, so if you're interested, open it. But I actually liked it a lot that you have my picture there, because that is me, that was me. And when I saw it, I thought about it, it is perfect to start, because when we talk with our colleagues about processes, and we do a lot of automation, we do a lot of dashboarding, then this is what they tell you. But it's usually, it comes to age, and and then if you don't maintain your process, then it's not great. Good, but let's get started. So I'll give you a bit of context, so it's quite slide heavy, excuse me for that. I'll tell you a bit about Bayer, but I assume many people know us. We are often on the news. I will tell a bit about myself, about the team that I have, the history that we have with Soroco, as Minoru said, for 5 years already. I will tell you about this program that Sam mentioned, which we call Core, which is basically a massive transformation program and an S4 migration at the same time. And then I will go into the project that we are running at this very moment. So it's an active project that we are driving, so it's quite interesting, and I can give you some insights as well how that's going. So about Bayer, Bayer is a very large company, as you know. I'm actually part of the crop science division, which is the agriculture part. Many of you might know Monsanto, which was an American company until Bayer bought it. I'm in that sector, but in general, when I introduce, I say I work for the aspirin company. That works always very well. So we are, at the moment, more than 100,000 employees. We have a very big presence in Europe, in the US, in Brazil. And then obviously we're operating in the different sectors, being consumer health, so aspirin, and everything that you can buy in pharmacy. And then the crop science is very spread. I mean, crop science is usually where rural areas are. Good. About myself, I'm already working for more than 15 years in corporations. It's that long already. And my background is actually I did an MBA in sustainability management, and one day I might return to that area, but now I'm really focusing on what is technology offering to us. So I'm really focusing on, I'm putting out a vision. Whenever I have a new team, I'll just put this North Star where we want to go, and then how do we get there, and then we build a roadmap to a detailed level of how do we want to achieve that. I have a very scattered team. It's in geographical aspect, but also what they're doing. So I put a lot of effort into just developing the people in the team, because they make the difference. I mean, I can tell good stories, but they are doing the work. So that is my main object. And then the other thing is, and that's why we work with Soroco so long, is we always look for what is changing. I mean, the market is changing so much. Now everybody talks Gen AI, but there's so many other things that are happening. So we're trying to find these solutions, and then we experiment, we scale and mature them. And then on the other side, my teams that I'm working with, we have the data analytics team. So going from source data, cloud, and so on to the dashboards, the end user experience. We have automation that senses everything where we're automating with external partner, customer, transportation companies, warehouses, and then the BPA. BPA is really RPA, we have process mining, we do task mining, you name it, we do it. I will show, I think now, yeah. So as we said, we already have a history. It's now, well, it's soon 6 years. I was not involved in the beginning. I didn't even start at Bayer before that. But you can see it's really a long, really successful and very enjoyable journey. And that's something that I also want to highlight. It's not just an amazing tool, but it's also a great team, and it's really a lot of fun to work with the team. We first started like a bit more traditional, I think. We said, okay, let's see how we can scout that interaction, how people are using actually the systems. But now the project that we'll talk about is, and it's not even here on the slide, is about, we want to do that migration. So we defined very clear milestones of what is it that we want to find out, and then how do we want to measure it, and how do we want to make a difference with that. Now I saw 2 other slides sneaked in, because I will click through them. This is actually how my teams are working. So I heard it from Kim as well, capabilities. So we have 3 teams, but it doesn't matter where you are. If you're part of a capability, then you may work on it. And just to give a sense of complexity, this is a snapshot of all the tools that we are working with at this very moment. So all of these things we are deploying in one or the other way. And I don't think it's even complete. But let me click through that unless some people want to take pictures. Yes, good. So the last context I give you is that core program. It's quite heavy slide, so I'll just point you at the parts that are important. Firstly, it's business-led. I think it's a general trend in the industry. I'm not part of IT, but we use technology every day. For everything we do, it's technology. And I think 5 years back, there was no chance that we wouldn't be part of the IT organization, but today we are. This transformation program is business-led. So actually the person that is on top of the organization is from the business, and then we have IT streams in that. What I want to point out is on the lower right side, you see we have the end-to-end value streams. So how do we do supply chain, contract to cash, and so on and so forth. Then we have the foundations, so quality, sustainability, data, and then you have the systems. And for me, it's like a small thing, but we have at the moment 6 or 7 ECCs, SAP, across the organization, and we want to go to one S4. And we want that everybody is working in that one process. So that's actually a very, very, very complex topic. We're now in the phase where we do the pilot. So I think the go-live is planned for early next year somewhere. We are now what we, for our project, which I will show in a second, we call the pre-stage. So we are now where we have a global template that was developed over the last 2 to 3 years, and it was a greenfield approach. So they just took the experts, and then they basically locked them away. And that's what happened. There was actually one of my colleagues, he went there, and then we have never seen him again. And now they came back with that. And they say, this is how you will work in the future. Enjoy. It's not that easy, and I did have that same experience in my previous employer. I used to work for Canon, where I was leading the business intelligence for such a migration. And it's all fun until you get to the reality, talking with the countries and trying to convince them to actually use what you have developed. We're in that phase now. We call it here fit to standard, so fitting to the template. And there are a lot of very subjective discussions because there's some team coming to a country, and our countries very often were like kingdoms. They could decide. They, of course, had to use SAP, but everything around it, they liked a system which is local, which is only existing in that one country, then they did it. And this is a little bit very, sometimes heated discussion that we're having right now. On a larger scale, the idea would be that we have a lot of global processes, and they should be the same in all the divisions, in all the countries. Then you have some common processes where it's a similar process, but you might have some variation. So as I'm from Europe, I'm actually German, but I live in Amsterdam. Every country is different. We have a lot of regulations. There's a lot of laws being brought in there, like we have the AI Act. We have different e-invoicing, as I think mentioned, which is a lot of countries very quickly now expect from companies that we are uploading all our invoices on their platforms. So these are the common processes, and then you have a local variance. Local variance can be in-house built solutions. It can be something where they call it a system, which is often not a system, often it's an Excel file. And there you have to identify which of those do you have to keep and what not. And this brings me to our project. Yeah. So we have defined the 3 stages. We have the pre-migration, as I said, where we are right now. We have the during the migration. So that's the time when you ask to switch, and you do all the trainings, you have all the, well, hopefully not too much, but you have the challenges that the teams suddenly don't work in their known process anymore, but they all have to go to the new one. And then you are post-migration. We're all working on S4, we're all working on the simplified processes, and yeah, hopefully it's all a bit better. But what we have done is we have defined for, on the top you see the business teams, so these are the teams that are executing the work today. What are the milestones? What are the things that we want to measure? What do we try to answer? And then what we call the core team. We also defined for them, what is helpful here? How can we support to make that migration better? And again, we do the pilot now, and that is a massive learning because we have to do that still for the rest of the world. Where we are now, again, in the pre-stage, we wanted to know, what are we doing? How do we execute the work right now? Again, we have process mining. And it's quite easy to start with it because you have access to You have access to the database, but it's just a very different thing you're looking at because you're basically deep diving to software. You're not analyzing how are your people interacting. So we wanted to see that. Then we want to see, can we improve something right now? Because, as I said, there's so much that we do manually. So much is living in Excel files. And ideally, we can stop that very soon. And we have a part that is extremely important is satellite systems. As I said, there are a lot of local solutions. And they're trying to capture them by having an Excel file, of course, and then just writing down, what is the satellite, what does it do, do you want to keep it, yes, no. And then the team has to check, do we connect it, or we just ignore it. For the core team, then, we can tell them how is SAP really used, because they do greenfield, but at the same time, they have to understand how the team's operating right now. So we can give them all these details. Now, during the migration, you want to see how is that change, that switch, that migration actually happening? How much work are we spending into just implementing the process? Because it will be a lot. It will be tremendous. There's a global team that is, this core team that is hundreds of people, but then every single employee will have extra workload just getting the project live. And we have the SOPs. We also heard it from Kim, nightmare. But here you can have it with screenshots, with everything. So you can actually take a lot of effort away from the teams. Another thing that we liked, and also Kim, it sounds like we work with the same solution, referred to is the adoption. So we can see very quickly, are they even able to use the processes? So if it's in real life, can they just do what was developed in Greenfield, or do they have to find variations of how they can work around it? And then we have post-migration. On one side, obviously, it is developed with the best intentions, but there will always be improvements. We want to know that. Another topic that we found extremely interesting, because you have live data, basically, we can establish alerts. So when you see that there is a certain thing happening that shouldn't happen, you can define it, and you can build a dashboard on it and just make it an alert where you say, somebody does something that cannot be done, and you can react on it right away, which is amazing, and we want to do that. And then, on the lower part again, it's not a pilot, but this has to happen for all the countries. So how can we improve that as well? How can we make the implementation plan a little bit better? But now, enough of the theory. I will show you a little bit what we have done. The project we have started not so long ago. I think the deployment of Scout has happened 4 weeks ago. The project itself, we have been in the planning for some time, but I think we started engaging with our stakeholder about 2.5 months ago, so with the kickoff and so on and so forth. So we already have now, we took 3 teams that are very transactional heavy. Customer interaction, so everything that our customer service does with the customers. We have the supply chain teams, and then we have the master data team, which is in our case local but also regional. We already scouted 43 processes, 11 are published. I'm pretty sure by now it's more, because actually one of the deadlines is this week, and we want to have them all published. And we have discovered 73 variations. So you can see there is already a lot of information that we have available now. What we have also seen is we have certain applications that will be seen as core, and there are a lot, 19, that are potentially not core. I mean, obviously, you have Excel. Excel will not disappear, Outlook will not disappear, but very often they are a critical part of the process, which they shouldn't be. And then we have already mapped how much effort was there, and it's a lot. So only within 4 weeks, we have so much information, we have so much knowledge that we generated so quickly. The next part, like I said, we want to see what can we improve already now. So we identify certain processes where they have a workaround, and that's actually a really nice example, because one thing we also do now is we have the processes, how they're done right now, and then we have how they should be done in the future, and we can compare those. So we can say in this specific process, right now there is a manual check where a person goes back into Salesforce and checks for some information and then gives that back into SAP. In the future, that won't be manual anymore. So actually this is where we can point out that actually by the implementation of S4, we will already save, in this case, 430 hours. So that's very powerful and very helpful for the core team as well. Another use case is yeah, where again, we see there as an improvement that we can do. So it's an immediate improvement that we can take because we see there is one step of the process that goes out of core. I think I'm running out of time, but what I find extremely cool, and again, we have seen it today before, because one thing is preparing PowerPoint slides, and I think everybody can do that, and if you put a lot of effort, they're looking great. But the other thing is using a tool, how it comes. And that's what we want to do. So it's just configured in a way that you see what is defined as the core application. So what is the global team aiming for? And what is all the rest? And we can go through all of the processes, and we can just analyze which of those are happening actually outside of that environment. And then we take decision based on that, and we can see what satellites do we want to connect and which can we neglect. Good summary. Bayer is very complex. I think I made it clear. Very large company, a lot of divisions, a lot of divestments, acquisitions, so we have a lot of different systems. Core is one of the, if not the biggest, S4 implementation project at the moment. And we try to simplify everything, and we do that at the same time. There's a large risk of error by just relying simply on the SME interviews, because also one thing that we see now, that we go through so many transformations, you actually lose a lot of knowledge by just people leaving the company. So this is one risk that we want to mitigate, but it's still there, and we see it all the time. And then we have all these satellite systems. So we have so many, and if nobody is manually mapping them, they are just forgotten. What we are doing, we want to de-risk the program. And again, it's a very large program. And we saw that Scout can play a tremendous role in that because it just gives us so much control over what's happening. We have all the information that we need to work with at the moment, during, and then past the migration. So we can make it measurable. What we want to do is actually, and I didn't go into the detail, we want to compare what is actually the benefit of going from our ECCs to S4. How much does it save us? I don't think you can say that without having such information. And then finally, we want to minimize that integration effort. So again, we are now in that first pilot where we're preparing it, and we're doing that for 9 months. For 9 months, there are workshops all the time. SMEs are sitting, they're explaining, it's written down. There is a lot of manual work needed. And then we compare that to 4 weeks where the effort of the employees, it's very minimal, and it's not just a sample set of employees, but all of them. So that's a tremendous change how we can work. And again, we have so much already after only 4 weeks that even we got surprised that it's just so good quality so quickly. And that was all from me. Yes, please.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Thanks for sharing. From Esprin, the first thing that comes, mostly I think, most of the mind is Esprin, the drug is well known, and how we have seen the marketing part, that how in 1899, in one of the Osho talk also he related that, how the marketing make it very famous so that you can do the supply chain. Now you have implemented in the supply chain. At that time in the 90s, the CSM, the supply chain, they potentially figure out, okay, this much of supply we have to send on this country, and that country. That's how you do the planning at that time in 90s. Now with the help of data, as you explained, that you are figuring out into the processes, but is there the next step that you envision from the planning of the supply chain till the shelf life? Because we all know that now in the pharma as well as in vaccine, the aggregation is mandate. That's why you have SAP and Salesforce and to do the aggregation from the labeling till that part. So how you're exploiting the data? Is there any vision that you have to exploit the data that you're getting from the spot, like Rohan explained, from end to end of the life cycle and the supply chain to get the drug in from the manufacturing and then the shelf life and to ensure that there's the sustainability and the zero wastage of the drug?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm afraid too complex to answer right now. We definitely look into these challenges, but I want to give you one example, which we actually did with Scout last year, I believe. And it's not for farmer or consumer, but it is for crop science. So the goods that we are planning and the most complexity is the seeds, because this is something that it's growing. So you're very dependent on the weather. You're very dependent on how quickly you can get it to the market. And we have scouted it, and it was quite shocking to see that from the source information to writing in SAP, when do we expect it's ready to be sold, there were 19 Excel files in between. So there was a lot of information, because there is a lot of information, because there's so many things playing a role. And then we also, not all the seeds that we're selling are produced by our own plants. We're working with other operations, because there's just so much demand always that we can't fulfill it ourselves. So this is where we see very clearly Scout showed us how we can improve it, de-risk it, and make it just much faster. So yeah, we definitely have to look into those things, but I cannot answer that for Aspirin.
Because that I was, have consulted this particular for one of my pharma UK customer, and that's where I'm thinking that if you have already explored this, so then best practices.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have time for one more question? Sure.
So specific to the S/4HANA migration, I'm obviously seeing a lot of large corporations are using the clean core or fit to standard approach. Would you be able to sort of double click on the relevance of pre-migration mapping of processes? Because if your fit to standard and clean core method, which SAP is proposing to most customers these days, automatically eliminates all the NVA or non-value add process steps or the handoffs in S4. So what's the relevance of pre-migration deployment of Soroco there?
Yeah. So I am not sure if we will be that successful to now still challenge the future template. I think we will be able to challenge how it is migrated or implemented in the country. But now going back into say, hey, what you did for the last 2 years, we think you could have done better, will be a bit risky. But what we very clearly see, and that's what we're doing right now, is we have all the processes, how they're done right now. And we will map them with what S4 is proposing. So without implementing, we can already point out where some challenges are lying. Because all the S4 processes, they are done, they're mapped in Signavio for us. So it was done with Signavio, with SAP Consultant. So they're all there, they're all existing. And we now, because we have them as well from the ECCs, and everything around it, because again, Scout it looks at everything, right? Not only at SAP itself. We can run that comparison before they start with the actual implementation. So again, we can come with a lot of recommendations and preparing the team. But yeah, if we would have started perhaps 2 years earlier with this kind of scouting at that scale, then we might be able to say, dear core team, please take this into account, because we give you a lot of relevant data. And I'm sure they would have been happy about that.
To add to what Michael is saying, see, when you do this fit to template workshops, right? For example, there are 84 regions. There is a standard template created, and you go to 84 regions in this case. When you go to every region, there's a pushback saying, hey, look, I'm doing it in a particular way, right? There's a lot of back and forth happening. Yes, there's a standard template, but I'm not sure whether it's taken everything into account. With this exercise, it facilitates a smoother adoption of that particular template, saying, hey, look, I know what's going on, right? My template takes care of it, don't worry about it. That's one part. So it facilitates and cuts down the time for adoption of those things, right? So that's one thing. The other thing also is that when you did the template, right, it may take care of 80%, 90% of it. For every region, there you will always find some nuance which may or may not have been factored into the template, right? So when you do this, it also helps refine and sharpen the template itself. So it's both ways. One is for adoption of the template. It gives me confidence. It cuts cycle time. It cuts friction. The second thing is it also helps feed back into the template, because there's 84 regions that you're going to do, right? So it both ways. So pre-migration is important. right? So it's not like, you're doing as is, to be, this, that, and the other. Even if you have this, these two important things are super important to drive the program more effectively.
Totally makes sense. Yes, I mean, you are absolutely right. You do get a lot of pushback from the business typically is, our process is unique and, we want to customize the solution versus the fit to standard. So, thank you.
Yeah. And it also helps refine the template itself with all of these things, right? Because the last thing you want is, there's a very important compliance step and you missed it because it's not really factored. No, everything cannot be factored in there. So this is a build-up.
Thank you.
Michael, does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Any other questions for Michael, guys? Awesome. So let's give Michael a big round of applause, guys.